Hey guys, Jeremy here. Thanks again for watching another one of these post-Christian videos. The whole premise behind this video series is to help people have conversations with someone who don't believe exactly what they believe. And we've been looking at the topic of Christianity and COVID-19. And this is the final part in this little video section that I'm doing on COVID-19. And the last thing I want to talk about is hope. The question I have for you today is, how much hope do you have in regards to COVID-19 in the world around you? One of the things that I've been seeing over and over again in my conversations with people is that they have quickly fading hope when it comes to a quick resolution to COVID-19. As they're looking at the impact in our culture, people are saying over and over again, it's all over the news, that our world will be forever changed. Now, however, there's still many of us that are still hoping for and longing for a quick economic recovery so that in some ways we can get back to normal life, whatever that is, as quickly as we possibly can. Now, one of the challenges with hope and reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because I believe there are many different types of hope. In fact, when we throw the term hope out, it can mean different things to different people. And if you're a Christian or a non-Christian and you've had conversations with one another, I bet that term hope has come up. In fact, I've heard Christians say, I can't imagine how people have hope right now or how they could have hope without Jesus. And if you're a non-Christian, you're thinking, easy, I have hope every single day. And it can be like two ships in the night having a conversation. So this video is designed to help you have conversations. Now, hope, again, is not a Christian thing. In fact, one Buddhist author, Thich Nhat Hanh, put it this way when it comes to hope. Hope is important because it can make the present moment less difficult to bear. If we believe that tomorrow will be better, we can bear any hardship today. Hope is not anything to do with Christianity. But what I do think you'll start to recognize with this conversation is that Christianity has a very unique perspective on hope, and that's what we're going to look at. The first hope that I want to talk about is wishful thinking. Now, this hope is very dominant in our culture. Wishful thinking is the belief that if I want it to be true, if I desire it to be true, if I speak it into the universe, that somehow I can conform the universe to my internal wishes and desires. This is very common. It's popularized all over the place, but I think most of us recognize that it also is kind of a little bit superstitious. Like to somehow think that if I want something bad enough, the reality of the universe and all its physical laws and properties will conform itself to my desires. However, let's be honest. We know that there are plenty of people in our lives that have deep desires. They want the world to be true. In fact, that's one of the reasons why some people can be miserable, because they want the world to be so different than it actually is. In fact, one of the challenges with hope that people say is that it doesn't matter if the hope is real or true. What matters is that we simply just have hope. It's just the form of having hope that matters. But I want to throw this out there. If all you have to do is pretend to have hope, then all the hope that you have is really pretend. And this is one of the reasons why I think very many people, while they want things to be true, they think they have hope. Their hope ultimately doesn't have any meaningful foundation for their life, and so it can crumble incredibly quickly and easily when their life is turned upside down. The second type of hope that's very common in our culture is blind optimism, the conviction and belief that things are going to get better. In fact, this is the type of hope that many of us are leaning onto right now during COVID-19. But I think we recognize that there's also a weakness that comes with this hope. When we look at the future, how do we know things are going to get better? We just simply choose to believe it so. Now, I get that optimism is a really good thing. In fact, I am a proponent of good thinking and positive thinking for our lives, having an abundant mindset for the way that we engage the world. But simply having optimism doesn't change the world. In fact, if we look at major problems that are in the world, we would say that it's naive to think that just believing it will get better will make it better. I mean, it's foolish to think that when we look at the world and we look at racism, economic inequality, injustice, murder, strife, inequality, all these different things that we look at the world and say need to be fixed, that the solution is just they'll get better one day. We recognize that that's not the case. In fact, when it comes to blind optimism, every single one of us, if we had to choose between good vibes and a good work ethic, we would choose good vibes. Why is that the case? Because good vibes don't produce great outcomes. Work and effort do those things. It's not enough to simply believe things are going to get better. There has to be something that belief is grounded in. That's why for many people, they feel their hope eroding during this period, because the belief that things will get better isn't necessarily grounded in anything that they can grasp. The third type of hope is hopeful dreams. Now, these dreams are things that we aspire to and want to be a reality in our lives. These are the things that we think about our future and we dream about how life could be. And these are great things to do. In fact, I'm someone who constantly has dreams for my life. I have hopes and goals that I set out with a plan to achieve them, to make it happen. These things are great. But I also recognize that there are some dreams that simply wanting them to be true doesn't mean that they stand a good chance of actually becoming true. Just looking at me, you recognize, Jeremy, there is no hope that you will ever be a supermodel. Jeremy, there's no hope that you can ever play in the NBA when you can't even jump 12 inches. There is no hope, Jeremy, that you're gonna be a millionaire because of the way that you spend your life. We recognize this. It would be naive to believe anything different. Now, I get that there's many blind optimists that are saying, well, you're not gonna be a billionaire with an attitude like that, Jeremy. And I totally understand where you're coming from. But let's just be honest. It's not gonna come simply because I dream it to be, that I aspire for it to be true. In fact, if you had to choose between a great dream and a great work ethic, the great work ethic would win every time. Why? Because great dreams don't come into fruition without great work ethic and a little bit of luck, or maybe even a bit of luck. In fact, if you were to take the dream and divorce them from the work and the luck, the dream would never happen, which means that the ultimate power then is actually in the work and in the luck rather than the dream. And so what we've seen with these hopes is, well, there's a substance of truth to them. They're not enough to ultimately build your life on. Now, again, I recognize that there are many people that say, Jeremy, I get it. I acknowledge all of these things. But what matters with hope is not that it's grounded in truth or reality. What matters with hope is that you simply have it. That's where the power is. In fact, while this belief is common in our culture, I think it's perfectly illustrated in a novel by Marion Zimmer Bradley. She is an author and she wrote novels, and she has one of the characters in her books who I think puts it profoundly and succinctly with what we believe often in our culture. And she put it this way: the road that is built on hope is more pleasant to the traveler than the road that is built in despair, even though they both lead to the same destination. If this is true, then hope is merely a tool for making us feel better. It's almost like a drug that numbs our awareness and self-conscious into feeling better about our future. But I believe that this type of hope and this type of thinking ultimately leads to despair. In fact, one historian and writer and philosopher who one day became a Christian, C.S. Lewis, he put the dilemma that he experienced, this very dilemma, this way in one of his writings. If there is no answer, if there is no creator, if there is nothing that is really true, when you are in love, you must remember that it's only a psychopharmacological reaction in your brain that is happening. There is no such thing as love. You may enjoy music. You have to realize that this is only a biological reaction. Beauty and ugliness, cruelty and compassion are totally subjective. They're not real. They're all in your brain synapses. What happens then is that you will be forced to feel the hopeless disharmony between your own emotions and the universe around you, which you really live. What C.S. Lewis is getting at is that if we just pretend that there's hope, if we just have to possess it in and of itself as if there is power in hope by itself and not hope that's grounded in reality, that will ultimately lead us to a place where our personal experiences don't match reality around us. And that can never be something that's good for us. In fact, that's one of the reasons why so many people live with despair, because they're told to just believe, to just have hope, but that hope is empty. It's not grounded on anything. So how is Christianity any different? Well, I think Christian hope is something that is fundamentally different than the three hopes we talked about. Now, I recognize that you may have experienced a form of Christianity that's really more like deism. It's just this belief in an abstract God. Oftentimes what happens with deism is that people who claim the name of Christian, who are really functioning like deists, they take the different three hopes that we've talked about before and just wrap them up with religious language, and they're not any different. This is why many of you, if you've grown up around religious people, or you've been exposed to Christianity online, or on phone, or on your phone, or on social media, you may recognize, man, there isn't much of a difference between your version of hope and what these Christians are talking about. But that's not Christianity. That's just deism, this belief of God out there. And what happens is we take this deistic belief and we just kind of marry it with our culture, and it doesn't produce anything of substantial meaning. Christian hope is something that's totally different. Christian hope is the confident expectation that God, as he revealed himself in the Bible, will do what he has revealed he will do in the Bible. This is totally different because then Christian hope is actually built on the reality of God's presence and his character. And this is very different because, again, if it's not just believing that God is out there, it's not just simply believing that God exists, but it's grounded in the fact that God has been active, that he's actually entered into history. Our hope then is actually built on the foundation of God's historical work. It's grounded on something other than our wishful thinking or hopeful dreams or blind optimism. Here's a great example of how that plays out. If Christianity is real and the resurrection is true, that means I can go through life with courage. This is why we've seen Christians face incredible hardships. They've given up sacrifices in plagues long ago while the plagues were ravaging the Roman Empire and people were literally throwing sick people out in the streets to die of exposure. Christians, at their own expense and at their own risk, even to the point of death, took these people in and cared for them. Why? Because they recognized and had hope in the resurrection, that the resurrection was a historical reality. And because of that, they could live with abandon, with courage, because they knew that this life was not the end. You see how this hope is a little bit different? It's grounded in the reality of God and his work around us. Now, if Christianity is not true, then the reality is that Christian hope is just another form of religious wishful thinking. But if it is true, it changes everything. Now, I would love for you to have a conversation with someone who doesn't believe what you do. And I've got a couple questions that I think would be a great way to start a conversation. One, what is hope to you? Like, how would you define hope? Where's the power in it? What does it mean to have hope? Two, what are the things that you hope for in your life? And what I think you'll start to recognize is that for many of us, we actually have a common set of things that we hope for and want for our life that we can build a relationship on. And if you're a Christian, I hope you're starting to see how you can better articulate and demonstrate the hope you say you have in Jesus. I hope you guys have a fantastic conversation talking about hope. See you later. Bye.